Welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to be guiding you through some genuinely fascinating source material today. We're unpacking a text called the Ahuramazdan Blueprint, and we're going to explore the hidden mathematical reality operating right beneath our global chaos. This text presents a completely different lens on world events. It argues that what looks like a chaotic, unpredictable geopolitical mess is actually deeply tied to ancient science, forgotten orbital mechanics, and, well, psychological programming. It's a brilliant, dense read, and we're going to break it down together so it all makes perfect sense. Okay, let's dive right into this. The source material kicks off with a really provocative question about the Iranian plateau and global politics. You know, the world generally treats the ongoing conflicts in the Middle East like this wildly unpredictable puzzle, but the text argues the exact opposite. It says it's perfectly predictable. It's actually a closed-loop system running on raw theological blackmail. According to the blueprint, this framework of fear has practically paralyzed everyone, from top diplomats all the way to brilliant engineers, locking them into an incredibly myopic doomsday script. The text describes this geopolitical deadlock as the trilateral Abrahamic mirror. It's a fascinating concept. On one side, you've got factions within the United States and Israel weaponizing geopolitical posturing. And on the flip side, you have the regime in Tehran operating on a narrative of prophetic victimization. But here's the catch. Even though they seem like total opposites, all three factions operate on the exact same symbiotic psychological control mechanics. They all run on fear. This brilliantly illustrates why a localized military strike won't cure the crisis, right? It literally just feeds the loop, justifying permanent chaos and expanding control for everyone involved. To really understand why this deadlock just won't break, the analysis points to the compartmentalized human mind. Think about it. We see brilliant physicists and logicians who rely entirely on the absolute, unbreakable laws of nature to build our modern infrastructure during the day. Yet the moment they step away from their instruments, they surrender their minds to ancient dream books at night, terrified of supernatural punishment. The text describes this psychological root as a literal virus in the human operating system. It's a ghost, designed specifically to bypass our deductive reasoning and turn us into passive, fearful robots. Section 1. Reclaiming Prehistoric Persian Science and the Ameshasepanta. So, to cure this virus, the source asserts we have to shift our focus back to the Iranian plateau, long before modern Abrahamic systems distorted its history. We have to reclaim its prehistoric science. This was a magnificent, highly advanced civilization, and their entire system was built on the number 60. Their prehistoric circular towns weren't just random settlements. They were highly accurate physical instruments used to measure planetary positions. And this incredibly precise system was built on base 60 mathematics. Actually, this prehistoric base 60 math gave us the very measurement of time and geometric angles that our entire planet still uses today. Pretty amazing, right? All of this immense scientific knowledge was compiled into the Zend-Avesta. The text heavily emphasizes this point. The Zend-Avesta, which literally translates to the meaning of the law, was originally a rigorous work of science and measurement. It was a collection of unchangeable natural laws and astronomical observations. It was compiled by scientists, not handed down by prophets as some monotheistic religion. Now, what's really interesting here is how these ancient scientists tracked the material universe. They categorized 7 natural forces, which they called the Ameshasepanta. These are your 4 physical elements: air, fire, water, and earth, plus 3 living beings: plants, animals, and humans. And what is absolutely mind-blowing is that this exact mathematical system is still preserved today. It survives as a living relic on the spring equinox table of Nowruz, known as the Hafseen. 7 items starting with the letter S, placed as a direct mathematical reminder of the Ameshasepanta. Section 2. The corrupted astronomy of Saturn and Satan. So, what happened? How did this beautiful, logical system get stolen and flattened? Well, the text walks us through a specific deconstruction sequence where advanced physics was literally converted into fear. Institutional priesthoods mapped the days of the week to visible celestial bodies, completely corrupting the prehistoric science. For example, they took the planet Saturn, which in prehistoric science simply represented the neutral physical force of strict structural law and restriction, and they stripped away all its scientific context. They corrupted the name Saturn into Satan, or Shaitan. By turning a natural planetary restriction into a terrifying cosmic enemy tied to a mandatory holy day, they built an absolute empire of fear. But the text points out that this ancient empire of fear is mathematically unsustainable today. It's leading straight to macroeconomic entropy. The political actors running these corrupted systems try to finance their permanent, fear-driven confrontations by printing massive amounts of unbacked fiat currency. But here's the thing. You absolutely cannot override the laws of physics. This introduces intense friction into a closed economic system, which inevitably manifests as runaway inflation. The text elegantly states that their rusted slide rules are breaking, simply because the pressure of the material universe does not stop for theological stagecraft.
Section 3. The absolute equilibrium of Ahuramazdan, Ahriman, and Ahuramazda.
This brings us right to the physics of the system. According to the blueprint, everything in the material universe dynamically operates through a strict mathematical sequence between two opposing forces. The text totally demystifies the cosmic order. It explains it purely as an energetic dialectic, not some religious battle of good versus evil. Think of it exactly like a giant battery. On the left side, you have Ahriman acting as the positive pole. On the right side, you have Ahriman acting as the opposing negative pole, representing natural decay, entropy, and friction. So the crucial point here is understanding Ahuramazda. In this prehistoric scientific framework, Ahuramazda is absolutely not a deity sitting in the clouds creating energy out of nowhere. Not at all. Ahuramazda is the ultimate balanced energy state. It is the current itself, the absolute equilibrium produced by the tension and interaction between the positive pole of Ahriman and the negative pole of Ahriman. And what maintains this cosmic balance? Asha. The text defines Asha as the unchangeable law of nature and the absolute mathematical truth driving the movement of energy. Because energy has to move, change is an absolute certainty under the law of Asha. And think about the implication of that. If change is an absolute measurable law of physics, it completely destroys the fictitious fear of a supernatural heaven or hell that's supposedly designed to punish you for adapting. Moving on to Section 4, Solar Cycles and the Origin of the Savior Myth. Now, you might be wondering, if this ancient civilization was so incredibly logical, why on earth did it fall into a doomsday loop? Well, it fell due to massive planetary climate shifts that were entirely beyond human control. Over hundreds of years, this timeline tracks 4 distinct periods where cyclical solar maximums and minimums caused catastrophic trauma. The planet experienced intense heating and freezing, which destroyed crops and induced absolute global survival panic. Humanity was literally dragged into a dark room of survival. This immense historical trauma completely broke their deductive reasoning. As the text observes, people mistook a cyclical natural solar event for a supernatural prophecy. The text argues that this specific historical trauma is the exact psychological mechanism that birthed the Abrahamic and Mahdi savior myths. It trapped people's minds in a constant state of fear, locking them into a frame where they just sit and wait for an external savior to rescue them from climate collapse. So, how do we actually break this psychological loop today? The source outlines what it calls an empathic intervention sequence, because you can't cure this virus by just attacking someone's dogma that only triggers their defense mechanisms. Step 1 is to validate their local view of the street to lower their guard. Step 2 is gently exposing that their desire to fight actually stems from a deep psychological fear of a changing world. And finally, Step 3 elevates them to a higher cosmic map, showing them that change is really just the shifting planetary aspects of cosmic time. And finally, Section 5, Unity through Deductive Reasoning. Let's see how this builds into a practical solution. Once the fear is removed, the text provides a mathematical way to replace that theological blackmail. Because the ancient Iranian system was rooted in physics, it gave humans a precise sequence of deductive reasoning called the mathematical dialectic sequence. It's perfectly logical. Step 1, you conceptualize an input through good thoughts. Step 2, you process it into articulation through good words. And Step 3, you physically materialize it into an output through good deeds. But what happens if the deed fails? In the Abrahamic framework, failure induces this paralyzing guilt or fear of a punishing God. But in the Ahuramazdan blueprint, you act as an objective investigator. You simply say, well, the energetic coordinates did not line up to make it work today. It is simply a failed experiment. You don't panic. You realize tomorrow is a brand new day with new cosmic angles and more choices. This completely frees the human mind from doomsaying. Applying all of this to our modern reality, the text concludes that as the rusted slide rules of global, fear-based empires break down all around us, nonviolent unity is literally the only mathematically sustainable strategy left. The path forward for the Iranian plateau, and really for the entire world, is a collective alignment that rejects chaos. It's about consciously connecting human free will directly to the deductive reasoning of natural cosmic laws. I want to leave you with a highly provocative thought directly inspired by our source material today. Will you remain a passive robot bound by the theological blackmail of an ancient book? Or will you reclaim your sovereign free will, utilizing your conscious reasoning to navigate the absolute certainties of cosmic time? The science is there, waiting to be remembered. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this incredible text. See you next time.